cool, keep the speed up exactly as the training had said. You know, the RWR goes off, first move is to check away, kick out some chaff and flare, arms are inbound over the shoulder. And I thought, man, this is the effing Air Force I signed up for. This is cool.
You got shot at your first combat mission ever.
Within the first 5 minutes. And Dipper set it up that way. Like, he set it up. He's like, hey man, we're not, you know, we're not here for a tickling contest. Like, let's go get this thing started. Let's go drop some bombs. God. So yeah, we did, like, first combat mission, and they had this.
This ain't no tickling party. Let's go drop some bombs. Caden, is that not the most Maverick quote of all time?
It really is. And we keep picking up these quotes. And that's why this is why I'm pitching it right now here live, that I think we need to have t-shirts or at least coffee mugs with the quote from Jeff Cannon. This ain't no tickling party. Let's go drop some bombs.
Well, actually, that quote, he was talking about his flight lead Digger on his first combat sortie ever. So Digger's the one that's setting the standard. He's setting the culture. No tickling parties, guys. We're dropping bombs today. We don't have the ROE to do it. We're going to go trolling. We're going to get people to shoot at us, and then we're going to kill those SAMs. And so that's the setup. I think you might be onto something. Maybe we need to start doing some merch here at Seeking Context.
I think so. And what great figurehead to be the leaders of Jeff and Matt.
That's true. Jeff Tank Cannon and Matt Blitz Ayres are two great friends of mine from the Air Force Academy, and they went on to storied Air Force careers. Jeff is the longest serving fighter weapons school instructor in Air Force history. He served 13 years consecutively, probably the most experienced F-15E pilot that ever, I'm sure that somebody's going to correct me on that, but he's extremely experienced and had a major impact on the Air Force's integration and just their culture over the last 20 years. And Blitz Ayres is the same thing, he's over in the F-16. He taught at the weapons school, and then he took that knowledge back to the combat Air Force and became a squadron commander and took his squadron to war, and he did all kinds of things. So both of them, that what you saw there and what you're going to see in a few minutes here is an interview about Air Force fighter pilot culture. And we recorded that interview in April of 2021. And so we're revisiting it in honor of Top Gun Maverick, because I'm telling you, 10 people in the last 3 weeks have asked me, Justin, like, go see that movie, and then I need to talk to you about it. I need to talk to you and ask you questions like, is this real? Is this possible? And so I did go see the movie, and I thought, Caden, you can pose some of those questions.
Right. And on Jeff and Matt, they seem like these action heroes. They look like they are Tom Cruise, and they sound like, and I wish I knew them. I wish I could meet them, but I do know you. I talk to you all the time, and I would have to guess that you're probably a Maverick type yourself, right?
I wouldn't. Well, let's just start here. So my call sign in the Air Force was Waldo. So in the bell curve of cool fighter pilot call signs, you got Maverick over down here on the other edge, and all the way over here at the edge for me is Waldo. And so it's probably multifactorial why I got named that. But, I delayed pilot training for 2 years to go get a master's degree in public administration. And so I kind of was like the Poindexter of fighter pilots in my view. I'm this erudite dude, still like to turn and burn, but, I could talk about some literature or something, and these guys are like, who is this guy? And so I wouldn't say I was the coolest.
Okay, so you don't have the cool call sign and you went into public administration, but you probably had like the leather bomber jacket, you probably had the cool motorcycle, you would drive down the runway, and you'd probably buzz the tower and fly through bridges and stuff, right?
Well, okay, so on this score, I did have a leather jacket. Everybody gets the leather jacket, and you do look cool in those, but you don't look as cool if you go out in them, maybe wear it to the officers club. But I didn't have a motorcycle. I had a Honda Accord. I did one time though drive it pretty fast. I was stationed at Langley Air Force Base, which is down sort of by Virginia Beach, and it's about a 2.5 to 3 hour drive from DC. And we would always go party in DC when we were there. And I was out later than I intended to be one night. I had to fly the next morning, I think. And I was driving back, or maybe I was scheduling, because I wouldn't have broken crew rest. This would have been bad policy if I was flying in the morning. I would never do such a thing. And so I was driving at 2 a.m. on the road back to Langley Air Force Base, and I got a ticket for 120 in a 65. And you would think that that would like bolster your cool kid credentials. It did not. With the culture of Langley Air Force Base at that moment, I got a $1,500 fine. The judge, well, it's the standard in the state of Virginia, at least in this county. I think it's standard by county. And my attorney's like, so the standard is a day in jail for every mile an hour over 15 over. So he's like, you've got about 2 weeks in jail. Look at what you're looking at. And I'm like, that's not going to work for me. And I'm like, how's this going to work if I have to go to jail? And he's like, well, you could still go to work. We could just serve it like 2 days at a time. If you're a fighter pilot, we could probably get them to do 2 days at a time on the weekends. So just for like 3 months, you can just go to jail every weekend. And so, when he talked the judge into this $1,500, this hearing was like 2 minutes. And he's like, it's $1,500. She's like, this is a smoking deal. I'm like, you're $1,000. This is the most money I've ever spent on anything in my life. And you think it's a great deal. So, that wasn't super awesome. Another thing that happened to me around this time frame is that there was a jet that was over at Richmond. Something happened. It was like broken from an exercise and they had to fix it. And so they say, hey, can you go pick up that jet? So I went over there, I pick up the jet, and then I've got to fly it back to Langley Air Force Base. Well, it's only like a 5-minute flight, but I've got enough fuel on board to fly for like an hour. And I didn't have anybody to go training with to do like, we could go do dogfighting maneuvers. And so, I sort of did a couple of exercises and then decided to go VFR, visual flight rules. And I wanted to go check out Virginia Beach and see all the people down there. I thought that would be fun. Well, I'm flying VFR, and one of the controllers was like, hey, work to the west or something. And so I'm like checking to the west, and then I kind of like turn on my afterburners. I thought that'd be kind of fun. And things that when you're a fighter pilot, you think that everybody thinks the stuff you would do are awesome. And some people don't think those things are awesome, like noise, sound of freedom. It doesn't always translate to beachgoers. So phone calls were made. And now I've got a reputation as like, I'm showboat.
Troublemaker.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm like, so anyway, I'm like, how did this happen to me? I don't know how I got here. And so then 9/11 happened. And then the squadron went to war in the fall of the 2001, I guess it would be, and or 2002. And so Squad Vega was our squadron commander at the time. This guy was a total warrior, and he was a really great, actually he was the director of operations at the time, and he led the squadron out. They were taking off like 12 airplanes. They're going directly from Langley over to the theater of operations and to land, and they're going to war. Like, this is it. And so it's like 5 or 4 in the morning, and there's tons of people out on the ramp to come see this takeoff where they're going to war. And so Squat leads it. He takes off full afterburner, and he gets airborne, and he must be like 15 feet off the ground. And he goes wing rock, 90-degree wing rock, 90-degree wing rock, back to level, and they take off. And the crowd goes wild. Like, they're like, this is the guy we want taking us to war. Like, they loved it, right? And so it was a really cool moment. Like, he captured the spirit of the moment, and said, we got to be aggressive, and we're ready to do this, and we're fighting for our country, we're fighting for our values, and it was just a really cool moment. About a year after that, most everybody's back from that theater. Other squadrons have rotated in and replaced us, and now we've got an assignment to go over to Iceland. And Iceland is a really great assignment if you ever have to go there. We had F-15s there that were stationed, kind of a holdover from when the Soviets it was like protection of the continental United States from bombers coming over the poles. And so I was, on this particular day, what's called an air spare. There are 6 airplanes lined up on the runway, ready to take off, and they got to go join a tanker because the fighters don't have enough fuel to get very far. You have to kind of fly with a tanker all the way across the ocean and get gas every 30 minutes or whatever. And so the air spares are there because if they want to make sure that no matter what, all 6 airplanes, no matter what 6 ones they are, get to Iceland. And if somebody's has a malfunction or their fuel doesn't work when they get to the tanker, then you just change out one of the air spares, continues on. Well, I'm the last guy in this train, and I'm, expecting that nobody will break, and I'm coming back to Langley. And when I get airborne, I look over to my right, and it's the same scene from that last year. And my mind was, oh, yeah, this is really cool. We're not going to war, but we are deploying, and this is cool. And so I just kind of give a little wave. I'm not doing anything like squat, I just thought I'd just wave, and the spirit of the moment would be everybody would like that. Well, when I get back to squadron after I land, I get called into our director of operations, Neek Nichols' office, and now Squat is the squadron commander, and Neek is number 2, right? And Neek's a great guy, love him, and he's like, "Hey Waldo, did you see some birds on takeoff?" And I'm like, No, I didn't. I definitely didn't see any birds. And he's like, "You didn't avoid some birds on takeoff?" And I'm like, it's like completely over my head. I'm like, what are you talking about? I had no problems on that sortie. It was great. I got, there's no problems. I'm back. I got to go do a bunch of work. What's up? And he's like, "Did you intentionally rock your wings on takeoff?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I saw everybody out there, and I just thought I'd, give a little wave." And he's like, I was like, "Is that a problem?" And he's like, "Yeah, you're grounded for 2 weeks for, improper airmanship." And I'm like, "What? What are you talking about? Like, what is wrong with doing that?" And he's like, "Well, we've got this new wing commander, and he's trying to set standards, and we have to be professional around here, and he doesn't want, bad behavior. He doesn't want that people, taking that sort of mentality." And I was like, last year I stood where you were standing, and Squat, who's now our squadron commander, like wing rocked 90 degrees each 3 times going to war. He's like, "Well, that may or may not have happened." I don't know if he said this, but he's probably, I can imagine, say, "Well, that was Squat and you're you." All right. Which is kind of the mentality. And he's just like, this is the situation. And so I was pretty injured. Like, it's like, man, I can't catch a break around here. I'm trying to I just couldn't climb up into the cool kids club. This is not happening for Waldo. And so, anyway, and Neek and Squat, if you do see this, I'm not disparaging you. If I had been in your position and there was a pilot that was doing what I did and was the Poindexter of the squadron, I'd been like, he can handle 2 weeks. I'm not falling on my sword for that guy. His career is going to be fine, and my career was fine. So it wasn't a big deal. Yeah. But what I can tell you is that the sequence of events did not get me what's called ops to ops, which is like where you go from one fighter squadron and then you fly another fighter squadron, and that's usually the guy that gets to go to fighter weapons school, right? You do 2 assignments back to back, and you really show that you know what you're doing and that you can become an instructor there. And then if you become a really good instructor, then they send you to the King instructor course, which is weapons school. So I did assignment to be an air liaison officer with the 1st Infantry Division in Germany. And that assignment was amazing. I'm really glad that things worked out that way because I got a broader perspective. And if you get to live in Germany, it's amazing. But I didn't go to fighter weapons school. I got to learn when in flying from these amazing, really talented pilots that go through that program. And so what we're going to share now is our excerpts from that interview that I did last year with Jeff Cannon and Matt Ayres about their experience there and, how they used it to advance, not really their own careers, but to advance good execution of air power in the Air Force and good projection of power for the United States. And I think you're gonna enjoy it. This is the real deal Maverick Top Gun in the U.S. Air Force. So please enjoy. And we're gonna be back with some more discussion, and then we've got another segment of another pilot, Heather Penny, who is she's the most Maverick of she kind of gives Jeff a run for his money in terms of passion for aviation. So please enjoy this episode, and Caden, I'll be back in a few minutes.
Yeah, cool. So Jeff, similar question for you, but there are just so many different levels of proficiency, and when you're kind of become an instructor at the weapons school, and then you kind of become a leader, figuring out how you teach the instructors to be instructors at the weapons school. I guess, how do you view that in terms of how do you teach somebody to be an instructor, and how does that differ from teaching somebody to train new pilots?
Okay. Well, I'd say number one, one of the things I enjoyed most about the career field was that it's a continual learning process, that it never really stops. So there's no defined end to it. You're constantly learning. Matt worked in operational tests where they're delivering new software, delivering new weapons, delivering new tactics. So there's always something going on. So you individually are always learning as well. At the baseline, I never worked as a pilot training instructor. I never worked as an FTU, which is the first contact with a fighter. The school that teaches people how to fly F-16 specifically, or F-15Es or F-15Cs specifically. They call that FTU, the Flying Training Unit. I never worked there, but those early stages of the training are primarily focused kind of on the procedure and just the basic techniques of starting the airplane, taking off, flying formation, flying instruments, landing out of a visual pattern, employing the airplane kind of at its most basic level, getting that stuff down, getting those basic skill sets down. But there's a hierarchy to it that once that training is complete and people move on to the next phase, in a fighter squadron, that's what I always thought was, kind of a neat thing. There was a constant, there was always another upgrade. There was always something else to learn. That once you get basically qualified in the airplane, then, a year or two later, then you get chosen to go through the 2-ship flight lead program, where at the end of that, you're qualified to lead 2 jets around. You do that successfully for some period of time, you get selected to go through the 4-ship flight lead upgrade program. Now you've actually got a no-kidding, fighting capability with, 4 fighter jets, kind of the baseline for what most of the tactics are built around. After that, now you can move either into like a mission commander, where you would be in charge of a much larger group of airplanes to go accomplish a mission, and then eventually an instructor level, where now you are qualified to teach all of those other skill sets, all of those other tactics, all of those syllabi. So that's, I don't know if that fully answers the question in the difference, but there is a hierarchy to it. It is a constant process throughout the system. And I would say one of the success stories, certainly in the Air Force, looking back on it now, is how successful those training programs are at taking very young people, in their early 20s, straight out of college, and within a period of months and even just a couple of years, not only are they flying airplanes on their own that are worth, $50 to $100+ million, and we totally trust them to do that. But that they're also at a very early age. I mean, we were in our early 20s, mid 20s as 4-ship flight leads and mission commanders, leading large packages across training ranges, and leading 4, 8, 12-ship packages worth of jets around. So the strength of that training system and the redundancy has proven over time to be a really successful way to get people trained and qualified and ready to do the job. So it's actually kind of shocking looking back on it every now and then when I see one of the CAF fighter squadrons come through Nellis, and you see what a young 2-ship or 4-ship flight lead looks like. And it is quite shocking how young they actually are, but totally competent, totally trustworthy, and that system of systems that's in place to get them ready to do that job. All the prerequisites, all the academic training that goes on, then into simulators, then into supervised flying, in the cockpit, supervised flying from another airplane, the check ride process, and that continual evaluation and training process. Very successful, very safe, and very effective in combat. So pretty neat thing.
Yeah, when you put it all out like that, you look back and you're like, gosh, how did I make it through it? It's almost, and when you look forward at the beginning, I can identify with what Matt said, like just somebody that was 3 weeks ahead of you in training. It seems like what they do is impossible. You'll never be able to.
I'll never be able to do that.
Well, by the same token, you can also look at some of the people that were in the classes ahead of us, and you're like, you know what? If that chucklehead can get through this, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be okay. So when you ran into that, I had a really hard time with instruments. Instruments never made sense to me. But I knew I had to get through instruments in order to fly fighters, so I could fly VFR all the time and never really have to fly instruments. Because if you don't get into a fighter, then you fly a lot more instruments. But I had a really hard time with that. But I remember thinking there were a couple of people that made it through in front of me. You know, I'm pretty sure if that chucklehead can make it, I can probably fake my way through this.
That's a good mental way to look at it.
Yeah, that's right.
So both of you went through the weapons instructor course and then became instructors in that program. It's also kind of, you know, shorthand for it as like the Top Gun program that the Navy has. But I guess for either of you, maybe Matt, like what is the weapons school or the weapons?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, at this point in our life, right, there's probably more people who've seen Top Gun than have been vaccinated. So you can probably start with as a general rule that most people understand Top Gun and they've seen the movie, right? So if you think that's a Navy course, it's usually 6 weeks to 12 weeks, depending on what version you're doing. The Air Force Weapons School is 6 months. In fact, you leave whatever assignment you're doing, you go TDY for a little over 6 months. So it is truly a PhD level course. Now, I'm going to say some things that Jeff Cannon's going to disagree with, and he should. We all have different opinions, but I'm going to call it a leadership course, but we pretend it's a tactical improvement course, right? So you show up, and what you do for the first little bit of the course is become a master of employing that airplane, right? So you're really focused on just you. But very quickly in the course, I'd say in the F-16 and the F-15E course are pretty similar. Out of those 6 months, by month 2, you're already into problem sets that value, the solutions value teamwork and planning and including other capabilities, and talking to people that do different missions than you, which at this point in your career, you haven't done very much. So that's all brand new, right? And so it really is a course to have you understand, if you think you're going to take your little piece of the Air Force and go out and solve these huge problems, that's probably naive, right? You are going to need all these other capabilities, but we haven't ever shown you what they are because you get stationed at Shaw. You don't get stationed at Seymour Johnson or at Tinker or at any of the other places, right? So this is the first opportunity for you to interact with those other folks, learn how and why what they do. They can teach you some things they do. You can teach them some things that you do. And that's really what the course values when it's all said and done, is how do you make sure that we are teaching the right lessons moving forward.
Cool. Jeff, would you agree?
Yeah. I think at a macro level, that's 100% true for people that hadn't seen the course before. Just like Matt said, 5.5, 6 months to get through the program. It's on a very strict schedule where the Air Force runs, an Alpha class for the first 6 months of the year and a Bravo class for the second 6 months in order to keep kind of the machine generating weapons officers for the combat Air Force. So that's the eventual goal for the program is to graduate generally somebody that's kind of in that mid-level 03 captain to junior 04 major level that is going to, they're in the realm of 28 to probably 32, 33 years old when they graduate. They're going to get assigned back to either the unit that they came from or an operational unit somewhere else in their community. When they get to that squadron, they're going to be responsible for essentially being the senior instructor, the senior tactics instructor for certain within the unit. So there will be other people in the organization that are higher rank, that is the commander, the director of operations. There's all sorts of people that will be higher ranks and have other jobs in running the squadron. But I would say that the lead tactical instructor, the top of the tactical pyramid in the squadron is going to be that newly graduated.
Yeah, I concur with all that, Jeff. And I should say, I don't want to downplay you. When you leave there, you will be a true subject matter expert on your aircraft, on your mission set. The level of academics where we start is usually at least an order of magnitude higher than where you end at your basic fighter training, right? So we are already starting you at a level that, you had to already be very well studied and very well versed in your aircraft or mission set to get there. And we start there as we go up. So I don't want to downplay that portion.
No. And I'm not disagreeing. I'm just, for people that are not versed in what the program is for, at a baseline level, that's what the weapons school is delivering to the Air Force is an instructor's instructor back at the squadron level. At the next level, what Matt's talking about, and I'd say one of the strengths of the weapons school long term, not only to the Air Force as a whole, but certainly to combat capability across the board, is all the integration of other assets, of other capabilities, the networking across communities that happens kind of in that second half of the weapons school syllabus. They've moved now to where essentially the last 6, almost 8 weeks of the program is weapons school integration, where you are out of your individual major weapon system stovepipe, and you are always operating with at least one and normally numerous other platforms, sometimes even platforms that don't fly, that you're operating with space assets or cyber assets, or you've got battlefield airmen that are controlling your fires and all those other sorts of things going on. So that level of integration, that the knowledge of how to put the pieces and parts together operationally to run an air campaign and to win an air campaign, coupled with the networking that comes with that, is kind of that second order effect that has really carried the weapons school to the next level, I'd say, in the last 20 plus years.
I have a question here, I guess, for both of you. Like, I had what makes a good instructor? And then after a career teaching hundreds of instructors, would you say that it's something that what's the mix of natural talent and just your ability to develop someone into a good instructor? Is there?
So I'm going to go first because I think my answer will be shorter than Jeff's. I think what makes a good instructor, whether it's in the Air Force or not, whether it's coaching my son's soccer team or not, you have to be selfless. You have to approach things from what is it that the person I'm trying to instruct needs. And that is inherently difficult to do. It can be learned. It can be natural. It can be a talent that you brought. It can be a journey that you're on continually. But that to me was the epiphany of when I thought maybe I became a pretty good instructor, is when I would simply think, how did that person take what I said? What is it that they needed? What tool set are they missing? Or what piece of information are they missing? And how will they receive that the best? Notice at no time did I say, well, I need to make sure that I'm looking good today. And it's a difficult thing. It's that human condition from which we all suffer.
Yeah. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think that's some of those intangibles are the hardest things to learn, to put your finger on, to be able to say, okay, that exists. I can cultivate the other portions of this, but those are difficult. That there has to, in my mind, there has to be some kind of raw material. I don't know that it's something that everybody has.
Right.
I mean, I hate to be skeptical, about humans in general, but it turns out I don't like most people. So there you go. I think there is some kind of raw material that needs to be there. Things that we used to try to focus on was baseline knowledge and capability, right? For our purposes in your specialty field or whatever it is that you're going to try to instruct to. I don't have the capability to instruct anyone on how to play the piano. I would like to learn how to play the piano someday, but I do not have that knowledge or capability, and I have no business trying to teach anybody. So at some level, you have to have the knowledge and the capability to do the job yourself.
Whatever that skill is.
Right. The next thing is the ability to, now that you have that knowledge and you have that capability, to sit down and organize a lesson that has timing control built in, that has a beginning, middle, and an end to the instruction, that teaches a skill set, and that you can break down maybe the entirety of what it is you're trying to teach into small digestible bites. Mm-hmm. In some cases, a syllabus is already built for you, and you just have to execute those pieces. But I would say the ability to take the knowledge and the capability that you have and break it down into digestible bites in some sort of organized manner, that you can present it to somebody that doesn't know anything about what you're talking about. I had an instructor one time, he tells me, He says, I can't teach you everything I know about this airplane. I can teach you everything you know about this airplane. And that was a very important, that's a very important concept, is to, as an instructor, to get over that in the beginning. Don't try to data dump your 6, 9, 12, 15, 25 years worth of knowledge in one lesson. That is an undigestible format. And that goes to the last thing, which is communication. The ability to effectively communicate, like Matt is talking about, and then to evaluate as this is going on, kind of that self-checking mechanism in your instruction. Is this registering? Is this providing, the ability for the student to move forward in whatever task it is that we're concentrating on? And if not, have more tools in the toolkit, another way to explain it, another way to go at the problem, another way to try to teach it. Generally, for us, that happened in the debrief, where we would see instructors get off track in the beginning. Is they would present a problem. They would have too much knowledge and too much capability on their own. They would present 37 different methodologies for solving one little problem in the brief, and then leave it up to the student airborne when things are happening at 500 knots and 9 Gs. Present them the opportunity to choose your own adventure between those 37 options. No, that is not correct. Provide them the way to do it on that particular day, the one that you believe in, that you think is best suited to their capabilities. And when that doesn't work, take a break, provide some in-flight instruction and try something else, or wait until you get back to the debrief, and now you can present your other 36 options for the choose your own adventure. But I think those are some of the things. There is raw material. There has to be some inherent capability and knowledge in the instructor themselves, and then they have to have the ability to organize that into a digestible lesson and communicate it effectively, and then reevaluate whether or not it's working.
Yeah. Okay, Caden. So that's the real Top Gun. What other questions you got for Seeking Context today?
Well, while watching Top Gun Maverick, there was a few things that kind of stood out to me. I won't spoil any of the movie in case you haven't seen it, but a big portion of the movie is about flying low and through mountains, and then pulling a bunch of G's from around, I think there's 9 to 10, maybe. As they said, that's the struggle of the movie. The conflict is flying low through mountains and pulling G's. Is that a regular thing that you go through?
So, with no offense to the movie, which I loved, that's kind of like basic baseline. Every fighter pilot pulls 9 Gs. Like if that distinguishes the elite from the not elite, it's not really representative. The difficulty of Air Force fighter missions are kind of on another level, and Navy. I'm not trying to disparage the Navy; they're amazing, but and flying low through the mountains is that's actually a fun thing that you get to do sometimes. And we didn't get to do it very much in the F-15C because we are always so high. So if you're in an aircraft that flies low, but that's also just kind of like that's what regular flying is about. And so in that case, I would say that they're showing really awesome things that fighter pilots do. And I will say that the dogfighting in the movie was realistic. Some of the low-level stuff was kind of realistic, but I just can't say that the things they describe that's what sets the fighter pilots apart. What you hear from Jeff Cannon and Matt Ayres, and in a minute we're going to hear from Heather Penny, you'll see why people that come out of instructor programs like that are really the reason the Air Force in the United States is so superior to every other service in the world, because of the dedication, the sophistication of the types of things that they do.
And so in the movie, Tom Cruise, Maverick, has some secret missions in the very beginning. He goes on very, top secret government stuff. And I'm guessing you probably did some top secret stuff. And I'm guessing you probably were around President Bush all the time. You were probably shaking his hand. You guys were probably best friends. So if you could show that picture real quick. Yeah, of you guys hanging out.
I guess I can describe a picture where I was in proximity to the president, but I don't have a photo because it happened pretty quick, and it's another Waldo story. So I was on. This is in the fall of 2001, after 9/11 happened. We started this mission called Noble Eagle. And Noble Eagle is where airplanes from all kinds of squadrons around the country would go and fly combat air patrol over Washington, D.C. They would do it over Camp David. We did it over, Crawford Ranch and all kinds of other places around the country, just because we didn't know if there could be more threats like this. And that mission still actually continues to this day. But this is very new. And so we're talking, this is a night in October. It was 24-hour operations. That's all we did for the entire fall of 2001. And so I'm with this guy. He's a classmate of mine from the Air Force Academy, Con Sittler. He's a flight lead. He's the same age as me, but he didn't go get a master's degree, so he's got 2 more years of flying experience. And so we head up to Camp David, and we have a mission like from midnight to 4 a.m. or something like that. And you just fly at 25,000 feet. And then if there's a threat, if there's something that like an aircraft that's not responding to a direction to stay away from this protected national airspace, then we have to go investigate it, find out what kind of aircraft it is. And if necessary, we go shoot it down. That's like, you brief all of these rules. And so at this particular night, there was they called out a low-flying aircraft that was fairly low and slow that was pretty close to the compound. Well, when we're up at 25,000 feet, our radars can't see down there, and so Con says, hey, drop back into like a lag position, and here we're kind of on NVGs, and it's pitch black. Of course, it's 2 a.m, and we drop down over the compound, and we're searching for this aircraft, which I'm pretty sure it was a non-existent aircraft. There was like a highway close to Camp David, and the ground radar operators would sometimes call out, fast-moving trucks. I don't know if those were double deckers or something, and they would think that they had a possible threat, but it wasn't there. And maybe this was an aircraft that was going to a civilian airfield, and it just sort of got lost. But in any case, we're searching for this aircraft, and we dropped down pretty low. And if I recall, I'm not exactly sure, but I think Con might have said, hey, check altitude. And it's possible, like maybe that if the MDA, the minimum descent altitude, was like, say, 5,000 feet, I might have been like doing that at that altitude above sea level, but I really needed to be above ground level in like the mountains there, about 1,700 feet. So it's a risk of crashing, right? And so if that would have happened, and we're trying to get slow so that we didn't, like, if you're going too fast, you can't like sanitize the airspace. So I would have like needed to pull up and light the afterburners to make sure I can climb and not stall. And it seems likely that, it could have been Con or me, but that we apparently flew over the compound, like directly over it at 2 a.m, and it was really loud, and we scared the first family, and the Secret Service called Langley, and we got dressed down when we landed at Langley. And I'm like, how does all this stuff keep happening to me? And they're like, well, what are you doing? Why are you showboating or whatever? They didn't really say we were showboating, but we're like, we're just trying to protect the country here. We're just doing our job. So we didn't get grounded in that incident. But that was I got close to President Bush, and I did tons of flights over DC. I mean, I got 150 hours that fall of just doing these combat air patrol. But I have another, that was inadvertent. I have another story, though. This comes secondhand. And I heard this from a friend of mine, Dave Lee, who was flying in F-16s at Crawford Ranch. So they were flying, they were protecting the president on the Christmas break in the fall. This is also fall, Christmas, New Year's of 2001. So his flight lead says, hey, I got a good idea. And the way I hear it, Dave's like, oh no. I don't want good ideas. This is his flight lead was the type of pilot that, like, you don't want to do good ideas with this guy. You're going to lose your wings. And so he's like, here's what we're going to do. At midnight, they were going to be airborne over Crawford Ranch at midnight going into 2002. We're going to sort of do a TOT mission, and we're going to form up, we're going to get low, and we're going to cruise directly over the compound, and we're going to light the afterburners intentionally, the both of them, and then like climb. And he's like, Bush is gonna love it. And they did it. They did it. And can you imagine? I rocked my wings like to say hello to people on the flight line. I would have been dishonorably discharged from Langley Air Force Base for this behavior. And I'm glad they were in a squadron that, like, I don't know if this is a warrior mentality. I don't know if this is the greatest use of national resources, but sometimes you do need some esprit de corps. And apparently they were trying to do this. And the story I heard is that there was an Air Force like body man for the president, maybe a lieutenant colonel, that was affiliated with the squadron that was doing the air support, and that he kind of covered for them and was like, oh, I think they're just doing some training exercises or something. And everybody was up. It wasn't like the story with me and Khan was like 2 a.m, and, you know, you wouldn't expect anything. You would probably expect fireworks. You would, you know, the fact that something loud happens right at midnight isn't the biggest deal. So in their case, apparently nothing came of it, as far as I know. And I only heard it secondhand. And so in both of these cases, I'm curious if anybody happens to know the first family, the president or Mrs. Bush. We'd love to talk to you here at Seeking Context and find out how that experience was for you.
Yeah,
that's my
Bush Cheney family. Please email Seeking Context.
And then I can get that picture Caden just asked me for.
That's right.
Picture with the president. So that mission, though, as I mentioned, was called Noble Eagle. And that mission started, of course, on the morning of 9/11 with no planning. Nobody briefed it. And one of the first people airborne that day is Heather Penny. And she was a classmate of mine in pilot training. And she gives Jeff Cannon a run for his money in terms of being the most maverick of fighter pilots. Her passion for aviation is something that will it rings through in everything she does, everything she says. And I think that if you just listen to her story about her experience that day, you'll be amazed. And it also, I'll say that, like, this is from, I think it's episodes 20 and 21, which are 2 episodes on 9/11 about all of the aviators that happened to be airborne at the time or took off right after the incident happened, and how the AWACS, just how the Air Force dealt with this unplanned situation and really crushed it. Like, we weren't there to stop the tragedy. We didn't get that. But after it happened, we sprang into action in minutes, and hundreds of fighter aircraft took off, pointed live weapons at thousands of airline traffic, and made sure that they all landed. And for the entire history of that program, there was no mistakes. It's a real testament to the types of things they teach in weapons school. And I think when you hear Heather tell this story, you're going to see why the training that Matt and Jeff went through and spread to the entire Air Force really created a culture that helped us get the job done in a great way. So here's Heather, and really, I think you're going to enjoy this story.
While fighter squadrons around the country were preparing to join the fight as fast as possible, precious minutes were passing by. American Airlines Flight 77, carrying 37 passengers and 7 crew, had departed Newark Airport at 8:42 a.m. Flight 77 was hijacked and crashed into the western side of the Pentagon at 9:37, 34 minutes after the Second World Trade Center was struck.
So it wasn't until after the Pentagon was hit that Cheney said, aren't there fighters in Andrews? Somebody get them airborne. And we got the call from the Secret Service. But we still didn't have any missiles. So SAS looks at me and says, Lucky, you're with me. Raisin, you take Igor, you guys wait till you get missiles. Lucky, let's go. And I would love to think that SAS picked me because I was a shit hot wingman.
Heather and her flight lead would launch immediately, without weapons, devising a plan to take down an airliner on a suicide mission.
I suspect actually the reason why he picked me is because he was a senior leadership in the squadron as the DO. Our squadron commander was a part-timer. And JC Witham was on an airline trip. So SAS was a senior leadership within the squadron. Beautiful wife, incredible children, beautiful daughter, and just adorable little son. Both of them are all grown up now. But he wasn't going to let anyone else take that suicide mission. Mm-hmm. He was going to lead from the front. And I believe he selected me because I was young and single and had no family. In the time that it took to finally get the authorization, there was some downtime. And Raisin and SAS pulled Igor and me into a briefing room, and they're going to weaponeer this, right? So they're thinking through, like, all right, based off of our JMEM, what's it going to take to take down an airliner? How many missiles does it take? Where's the best aim point? What can we do with our gun? How many rounds are we going to have? You know, and if we don't, what do you do? So when we finally got the call, because we had briefed it up, we knew that this was going to be a suicide mission. Because between the two of us, we only had 210 rounds of training projectile bullets, TP rounds. They're basically like 20 millimeter BB guns. You know, when we go into combat, as you know, you get the high explosive incendiary rounds, or like little tiny bombs, each and every one. But that's not what we had loaded up on the jets. And so SAS had 105 rounds and I had 105 rounds. And between the two of us, it wouldn't have been enough to take a jet down. Mm-hmm. So SAS was going to fly his jet into the cockpit of the airliner. And I would fly my jet into the tail, into the empennage, and take off that back half of the airliner.
While they were preparing to launch, Sergeant Nuts McNulty was making phone calls to airline reservation desks in an effort to provide Heather and her flight lead with intelligence on what airplanes they should look for and where to search.
And because of the work that Nuts had done, we actually believed that there were up to potentially 3 unaccounted for aircraft.
Right.
And we had been talking with Potomac Control specifically, and we knew that there was one that had been somewhere near Cleveland and had turned around and then come down. And so that they believed that there was one that was down coming low over the river, the Potomac River.
With no time to lose, Heather and her flight lead scrambled to take off as soon as possible.
Let's go. And so we, you know, run down to life support. I'm putting all my gear on and making sure I don't forget anything, because I knew that if first of all, I wasn't going to be able to run back to go pick up anything I forgot, right? And if anything in my life mattered, getting it right, this was that moment.
As a young wingman who had never flown in combat nor been taught scramble procedures to launch in a time pressure situation, Heather ably kept up with her flight lead, SAS.
Well, he's still plugged in and SAS is beginning to taxi. And I'm yelling at him, pull the chocks, pull the chocks. And I'm thinking, I'm gonna have to jump the chocks in afterburner just so I can get going. And the chocks suddenly release and I lurch forward like that and kind of step on the brakes and everyone is still under my jet. My crew chief is still plugged in. I'm taxiing, which is a big no-no, right? You never move with anyone under your jet. But they haven't finished pulling the pins. They're pulling the pins out of my gear. They're pulling the pins out of my tanks. They're pulling the pins out of my chaff and flare. They're underneath me. And it was, I'm just getting ready to turn left on taxiway Echo. And when my crew chief says Godspeed, and that was the last that I heard from him that day.
As Heather and her flight lead take off, they are struck by a moment of stillness on that chaotic day.
And we, like Billy, we turn to the northwest. There was nobody in the sky. It was so quiet. It was just surreal. And I look down and I see the Pentagon and the black smoke. And, I spread wide on SAS to the north of him, and we head out over Pennsylvania, and we never found anything.
After that episode aired, Brigadier General Ben T. Robinson, who was the commander of the AWACS wing at Tinker Air Force Base on September 11th, called to thank me for telling an important story of American history. General Robinson also told me that he would have been extremely proud to have a daughter like Heather Penny. And as it turns out, I actually met Heather's father a few times while we were in pilot training at Shepherd Air Force Base. And I am sure that he is incredibly proud to have a daughter that followed in his footsteps. John Penny graduated from the Air Force Academy, was a top gun in his pilot training class at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in 1971, served 140 missions in Vietnam, and has won the Reno Air Races multiple times. As today is Father's Day, I thought it would be appropriate to wish Happy Father's Day to John Penny, as well as Matt Ayres' father, Leonard, and Jeff Cannon's father, Jim. Leonard Ayres dedicated his life in service to this country as an FBI agent in Leavenworth, Kansas. He joined the FBI at age 19, serving as an analyst, early computer IT infrastructure officer, and finally, operation support. With 47 years of consecutive service, he was the third longest serving agent in the agency when he retired. Jim Cannon, pictured here with Jeff at an Air Force Academy football game in 1994, was the original Top Gun before the movie existed. Now living in San Diego, Jim was a Navy F-14 pilot who, like Maverick himself, retired as a Navy captain. And as you can see, the Cannon and Tom Cruise families share some of the vampire bloodline that inhibits aging, which is a bit much for the rest of us. Jeff today looks exactly like his father and looks exactly as he did the day we marched up the Bring Me Men ramp at the Air Force Academy in 1992. I've met all three of these fathers, and I am sure it comes as no surprise to those that know them well that they raised three true American heroes. Like their fathers in all aspects of their lives, Jeff, Heather, and Matt exemplify the Air Force core values: integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all that we do. Now, I would be remiss if I did not also wish my own father a happy Father's Day. David Wieland was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the U.S. Air Force after graduating from Kansas State University. While in his initial training, my grandfather, a Navy pilot himself who served in World War II, died suddenly, which led my father and my mother, Reggie, to return home to Oakley, Kansas. He has owned and operated Wieland Farms Incorporated for over 50 years and taught me the values that make me who I am today. And we would like to wish a heavenly happy Father's Day to Caden's father, Jason. For 14 years, Jason Runnels was in EMS, and for a few of those years, he worked for Life Team. He rose to the title of captain and impacted many lives on the way. During his last few years of EMS, he went back to college to get a Master's of Science degree from Friends University, and following his completion of the master's, he got his job as the Kansas Big Brothers Big Sisters, where he became the Director of Organizational Development and HR. Jason was my high school classmate, and despite his early death from cancer 3 years ago, his spirit shines bright in the life of Caden, who I am honored to know as a colleague and friend. Last, I would like to honor the memory of a fallen fighter pilot who embodies the Top Gun ethos. Captain Will Pyro DuBois died on December 1st, 2014, when his F-16 crashed on a mission in support of Operation Inherent Resolve in the Middle East. Matt Ayres was commander of the 77th Fighter Squadron deployed in combat at the time. And I spoke with Matt last week to compare reviews of Top Gun Maverick, and he told me that his experience watching the movie was probably different than most Americans. The weight of combat deaths rests heavy on the shoulders of commanders that lead soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen into war, and all that serve alongside service members who pay the ultimate sacrifice. Revisiting the movie that inspired so many of my generation to pursue flying careers, airmen like Matt, who have lost brothers and sisters in combat, connect with a very tender place when reminded of Goose's death and the impact of that loss on those left behind. I am sure that that mix of grief and pride is felt deeply by Pyro's father, William Ham DuBois Sr. After Pyro died, Ham, his wife Donna, sister Devon, and Pyro's wife Ashley established the Pyro's Wings Foundation to honor their son's memory. Every year in August, the foundation hosts a Push It Up trail run in Colorado with proceeds supporting a scholarship that goes to one outstanding ROTC cadet pursuing a career as a fighter pilot. The family's favorite quote from Pyro's action-filled life is, "Anything in life is worth doing. Anything in life worth doing is worth overdoing. Moderation is for cowards." So as we celebrate this Father's Day, I would like to take a minute of silence to reflect and find a place of compassion for those who may have fathers that have left this world, and those fathers who bear the pain of a lost son or daughter with strength and dignity. And in this moment of reflection, may you also get in touch with the incredible love that endures beyond the grave. Well, Caden, any last words?
Well, usually this is the part of the episode where I would talk about how you seeking context and support us, but I feel that it's appropriate for this episode that you should take a look at www.pyroswings.com. It's a website and scholarship where you can learn more about this hero and his family, and also learn more about the William H. Pyro Du Bois Memorial Scholarship, founded in honor of this American hero. So if this story resonated with you in any way, please go check out pyroswings.com.
Well, that's pretty altruistic, Caden. I'm not sure if altruism is a super common fighter pilot Top Gun characteristic or personality trait.
So you don't get call signs for being altruistic, but
I haven't heard of it.
But I guess maybe it could change a little bit. Maybe it'll be really cool for, Top Gun pilots, for fighter pilots to be a little more altruistic.
Well, I suppose your generation is going to have to be the ones to lead us to higher ground. So today I'm going to allow it. And I do agree, though. Just visit pyroswings.com and learn more about this guy and learn more about his amazing family. And I'd like to close today with the third verse of the Air Force song. This is something that at the Air Force Academy football games, the crowd sings and then the cadets sing, and that the football team sings at the end of every game. It's a very somber moment when we take just a moment out of our day to think about people who have given the ultimate sacrifice in pursuit of aviation and in pursuit of their passion and patriotism and defense of this country. Here's a toast to the host of those who love the vastness of the sky. To a friend we send a message of the brave who serve on high. We drink to those who gave their all of old, then down we roar to score the rainbow's pot of gold. A toast to the host of those we love, the U.S. Air Force.